Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors for the morning of May 6th, 2019. I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first item of business is to review our agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Item number 3 is to receive comments from the public. Any members of the public wanting to address the board on a subject that is not on our agenda, please step forward, state your name and address. Sir.
Daryl Wessing, 1924 Vale Avenue. I apologize for not getting on the agenda, but we went out with the board, the DNR on Friday to sample the roads, and so I couldn't get on the agenda that early because I didn't think it was going to be an issue. It's the most bogus thing I've ever been a part of in my life, and I'm going to explain why. The county picked the roads, that's fine, I accept that. We went out to the first site on Yellow Avenue and met with the DNR, and it was Ed, Dr. Askew, and Doug and I. We get out of the car and look at the road, and there's slag on it. You can pick it out, you can see it. You know, I've driven on for 7 or 8 years, you can see the slag. So Doug went up and approached this Mr. Hilton, who was heading up and did the co-op report, and said, this road has slag, and this is supposed to be the control. He said, this is what I got from the county, and this is what it's gonna be. So we didn't say anything more, and we just sampled like this. What they did was put in 100 foot, do 20 samples that kind of split the road down the middle and did a sample on each side in 100 foot. So they took their samples. After seeing their co-op and everything, we took samples in the same grid system they did, and we're going to get them analyzed. So then we went on, and they split up into 2 groups. DNR, Doug, and Dr. Askew went with one group from DNR to go to 2 more sites. I went with the Mr. Hilton, the gentleman that wrote the co-op forum and was the head of the group. And we went to 2 sites. We went to Davis down south of Nichols and 260th Street. And then we did the same thing. I took samples in the same quadrants in each square, and they took samples, and that's fine. We'll get them tested and checked out. But when we were quitting, Mr. Hilton, he wanted to know how we were going to handle our samples. And I said, well, we're going to air dry them. Well, then we'll try, air dry them at low temperature, not air dry, but low temperature in an oven to dry the samples before you sift them and everything. And he goes, well, how are you going to dry yours? And I said, well, we'll try and do it that way too, and that was fine. And then I thanked him for being a part of it, and he said, yeah, we want some of these samples to come out good and some of these to come out bad. And I kind of, well, wait a minute here, you know. And he goes, well, we're going to use, there's a fluorescent, I don't know the proper name, where they cite all the samples. So they're going to have 100 samples, but they're only going to test 15%. And we want some to come out good, and we want some to come out bad. And I'm going, wait a minute, this is cherry picking. And he didn't say which way he wanted to come, and I don't care, but that should be objective. So it was, you know, bad. Now to back up one more thing, the day before we went out, a DNR person went out and flagged the road, put a flag in the road where we're going to sample, and talk to the residents to make sure they understood it wasn't a major problem, all these cars here in DNR. And that's fine. But he should have observed at that first place that there was slag on the road too. So I just think it was a bogus bullshit deal. And you people are tied into it now if this goes sour because of that, the base or the standard of a road with slag already on it is wrong. And we're going to do one additional thing. We're going to maybe get permission from an adjoining county to sample a road that we know there's no slag on for comparative, and we'll get back to you with our results. But I wanted to get here today before results come out so you don't think I'm sour grapes in it. This thing was bogus, and it's a cover-up. I'm sorry, but
So where was the control sample, Darryl?
on Yellow Avenue, up south of Stockton, and it had slag on it. I have pictures, we took pictures, and we have samples. Now, it might not have been put on last year, but it had slag on it, and that's wrong.
Yeah, and I don't know what all we provided, I believe all the county provided to them was the location of slag and roads without slag.
And there was a document that said there was no slag applied.
To Yellow Avenue?
Yes,
Anywhere or certain miles?
it just said Yellow Avenue, I believe. Doug.
Yellow Avenue isn't very long. It's only, what, a mile?
Okay.
It's only a mile long, so.
So that's all I have. But I wanted to be upfront, so I don't want to be accused of sour grapes later on. This thing was bogus.
So were the other sample sites, were those to have slag on them?
Yes, the other ones were to have slag on them.
So you had one site that was not to have any,
Not to have any, which had it.
or at least not to have any that was applied by the county.
It's in the middle of the road. There was no farms around it. It's right in front of, or close to Mid-America's substation.
I know exactly where you're at.
Yeah. And you're party to something that's a cover-up now because of the information was given from your county engineer to them. And the part, I'm gonna blow the whistle long and hard on this, because I can see one of the things that generate, remember when you got the report from Washington on the coal ash, or the coal slag furnace, and that we thought everything was good? DNR may generate a report based on this deal where they had a road already with slag on it, and it may not look near as bad, but that's wrong for the state of Iowa, and that's wrong for the public. And I intend, and I think others will, blow the whistle long and hard on this.
Did you mention to, I don't know what his name, Hilton?
Yes, we did.
Did you mention that you felt there was slag there?
Yes, Doug did, and I
What
stood
was
behind
his
him.
response?
This is what the county engineer is, and
It is what it is. We're
It-
gonna go ahead with the testing. That was his comment.
And I'm curious on his verbiage to you when he talked about the testing that results were gonna come back. And he specifically said he wants,
some to come good and some to be
or did he
bad.
say, some will come back good, some will come back bad?
No, he said, I want some to come.
Because that's a big difference.
Yeah, I know, and that's what he said. I want some to come bad, and, yeah.
You know, as, you know, that, and, you know, sometimes,
See, and then the other thing, they're taking these 100 samples. Think about this. So you divide the road, and so they're only going to test 15% of the 100 samples. But I think they're going to get to that 15% by doing this fluorescent. I don't know the technology, but it's a fluorescent gun. It gives them some readings, then they can tell whether it's high or low. And I assume, but it would make more sense. And there again, that's part of that QUAF that wasn't written and didn't have those standards in that Ed, you know, we talked about. It doesn't have a random method of picking them samples, or those samples. So this thing is, it's bogus.
Daryl, a couple of questions. Does anyone else there witness that discussion between you and Mr. Hilton?
No, other than DNR employees. I was the only one on that one. And I'm not,
And the other question I have is, did you guys do a split sample?
they split with Saab, but we chose not to do splits, but they observed.
So you chose not to do splits.
We
So
did,
you chose to make your own.
no, we were in the same quadrants and they watched us, so they can observe us.
Who took your samples?
I took on the one group, and Doug and Dr. Askew took on the others. And we used a clean utensil, stainless steel spoon each time for each sample site. They were using the same shovel and weren't cleaning it part of the time.
Why did you decline to take a split sample?
Because, all right, I'll give you an example. Saab took a split sample. Instead of them mixing it in a bucket and giving them, they'd take a shovel and they'd peel some off and put in the cup. They didn't take a mixture of the whole sample. I mean, I observed that in our group. It wasn't,
They just took a portion of the.
oh yeah, they take a sample and they just took a portion off the shovel, and then they might get, and they were also getting a bag filled from DOT, and it took about 20 pounds, and they're gonna turn their samples over to DOT to sift. So they're gonna lose control of them and give them to DOT to sift to get to the fine aggregates or whatever they need, the particle size. And there again, I mean, why would you turn your scientific deal over to a third party other than for the final testing?
Why would you want a third party?
So,
So the samples are taken, they're not a core per se.
no, they scrape, Not even an inch, on the surface off the road. Not a core, just scrape. And it wasn't even an inch, probably a quarter of an inch to a half. They scraped with a shovel, and we just took a stainless steel spoon and peeled back, and it was kind of wet that day to get enough and get in a bag. We used special bags that aren't no metals or contaminated, and you put each sample in the bag and number it and sample site. And
Any other questions?
no, I have no more. I'm just
I-
thank you for the time.
So I just had one question.
Yes.
When do you think you're gonna have your samples back?
Well, we're going to wait. Today, I think we'll be seeing with an adjoining county about taking a sample with no slag on it. So we got a baseline.
You guys surely move faster than a bureaucracy, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And I asked the DNR, and he thought a week to 2 weeks. They might have some preliminary results. And I think by preliminary, I think he means by using the fluorescent where you shoot it on the site or the material. And thank you.
Yep.
I got just a couple other comments. Doug Boyd, 3171 180th Street. I knew you were waiting for that.
I know you've been doing it a lot. I appreciate it.
The locations that were given to the DNR as locations that had no slag on them, no slag at all, were the one that we went to, which was on Yellow Avenue. Also on 155th Street, which where CJ Ryan lives, and he's been fighting the slag too. He don't like the slag that's down his road. So we know slag's on that road also. And then there was another one on 130th Street, and they only chose the one at Mid-American Energy. So we got 3 sites, 2 of which we know there was slag on it that were given by the county engineer.
So
So,
that last one was 130th Street?
yeah, it was 130th Street.
Whereabouts on 130th?
2775, it was Trent Barrett's location, was the house. That one, I don't know if there was slag, I never went to and looked at it.
And where on 155th?
On 155th, it was 3106.
Thank you.
So, then the other one I went to was it was on Trolley. If you guys know where Trolley is, it's down by Kent Research Farm, down through there. Well, the test was being done by the Kent Research Farm, by the swine building. Well, we went there and that was just totally packed because of everybody coming up from Mekasiba. You know, it was totally packed and it just wasn't a good location to go. But we were able to find a place from where they had marked this south about 50 feet that wasn't too bad. It's because we were supposed to stay in where they had the flags. So we did our test there, and while they were pulling the samples there, I went and talked to Brant Bowling. I don't know if you guys know Brant. Brant's worked at Kent Feeds for a long time. And I asked him, when was the slag put on this road? He says, don't quote me for exact, but it was 3 to 4 years ago. And all these locations were supposed to have been done in 2018. And this one was 3 to 4 years ago. So another site that was not correct when it was given to the DNR. So that's three or four locations that were incorrect.
You're saying the county engineer informed the DNR that this site on Trolley Avenue had slag applied in 2018?
That's right.
Okay. And where do you have that information from?
That was from the email that came from the DNR.
Okay. You have a copy of that?
I don't have a copy for you,
Can I
but
take a look and take a picture of it?
sure.
Thanks.
Mr. Bowling was just working off of memory though, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but he's been there for a number of years and
But that doesn't mean that.
it doesn't mean that.
it wasn't done last year, he knows that for sure. Now,
I wouldn't know that for
now there could have been some on the other end of Trolley, but that site wasn't located, or wasn't designated. Because when you get to the, closer to New Era, it's pretty black up there, you can see that there's a lot of slag up there, but that was never chosen. So the site that they said was supposed to be 2075 Trolley. So that's what was given, and the information that was sent was, it was done on 6/28 374 tons were put in, and northwest to southeast. So it wasn't specific in my mind that it should have been the northern end of it, so.
Doug, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing on here where there's anything about slag being applied in 2018.
That was in your quote that I gave you last week.
So that's in the QUAP?
Yep.
Not an email?
Right. I gave you a copy of that last week.
You know,
Yep.
So I'm with Daryl. It was pretty bogus. When we observed them doing the sampling, they used a shovel. It was never cleaned properly from site to site. So the whole tests are really, in my mind, bogus, the whole works. So we use clean equipment at each location. Brand new, different stainless steel spoons to get the information. And if you want to look at, if our tests were within this far of theirs, so we're in the same grid, because the grid's supposed to be a pretty good size area.
Except for the one on trolley, right?
Yeah, well, we didn't go to where they had it flagged. We went south.
They did
but
sample there.
They sampled there also, so everybody sampled.
They didn't.
They did. Everybody sampled there.
They sampled in trolley outside the flag area.
Yes, outside the flag
They
area.
couldn't get
So they
there.
did, yes. So I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware of the situation there. We kind of warned you a little bit about this last week, that they weren't gonna follow proper procedures, and it's really showed the other day when we were there, so I was really displeased with the way it was taken care of. So, thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
I just have one more thought on this. So let me see if I understand this correctly. Then Doug, you feel that the information given from the engineer's office was incorrect to the DNR, is that what you're saying?
He's the one that gave it to him. It sure didn't come from us.
Let's ask the question again. So you think that the information that came from the engineer's office to the DNR is not truthful? Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is item number 4, discussion and possible action to approve claims dated May 6, 2019 in the amount of $619,597.34.
Move to approve.
Second.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up is item 5, discussion and possible action to accept a grant from the Community Foundation to help fund Muscatine County Historic Jail Restoration Plan in the amount of $1,300 with Mary Beveridge. Good morning, Mary. Sure. Love to have you.
Mary Beveridge, 1416 Mulberry Avenue. Muscatine.
What can you tell us about the grant?
I'm not prepared, I don't have a prepared statement, but we are in the process of submitting funding grants as well as letters for donation. And we hope to proceed then with the second phase of the project. And we're awaiting a redesign by Mike Nolan for that phase.
This would be one that basically takes the any maintenance function out and goes primarily to it.
Right,
To an archive and museum.
Right.
and this grant will help fund, they have contracted with Michael Nolan to take a look at the Doug Steinmetz original design that still had maintenance in it, was to add on for maintenance, to kind of rework that a little bit, so they're doing fundraising, and then this grant will assist with that step. So right now, they're still in the planning and design phase.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Jeff, seconded by Santos. All those in favor? Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you very much.
Item 6 is discussion and possible action authorizing the submission of a grant application for the Sheriff's Office to purchase 37 ballistic vests and for conservation to purchase 3 ballistic vests under a 50-50 funding match with Captain Jeff Muller. Morning, sir.
Good morning. This is a grant that comes about every 5 years. Our grants are our vests are on a 5-year cycle. Manufacturers say they're no good after 5 years, which, okay. We will pay the full cost, and then the DOJ will reimburse us if we're approved. We're getting 37 vests, Kurt's getting 3. We have to submit them simultaneously, and then, once you guys approve it, then the grant goes in together.
I'll move to approve.
Jeff has moved.
I'll second.
Scott has seconded.
Jeff, I have a question. How much would these be if we didn't have the funding?
The grants themselves, or the vests themselves are around $400, and then the external carriers are about another 150. So $550, give or take.
Any further discussion?
For the minutes, could I have the amount of the, what's the amount of the grant?
Yeah, it's, total cost for us will be $20,054 is the upfront cost,
Oh, okay.
and then.
It would be half of it.
We'll be reimbursed for half of that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, item number 7, items with County Engineer Keith White. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning.
So first, you've got a letting date for us.
Yeah, that's for grading a road project up Iron City and 130th, replacing, eliminating a structure. And we had suggested June 10th at 9 a.m. And that is 1 week before the DOT letting, so this conflicts with contractors bidding DOT jobs.
I'll move the approval.
Jeff has moved. Doug has seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Passes. Project update?
Once again, with the weather, not a lot of change other than we believe both of our bridge replacement projects are gonna be later summer. Obviously, the water is in play with that, and that's about it.
Next up, we've got a discussion on tap, but I want to exercise a little chair privilege and just ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
That we heard earlier. Just in terms of what was provided to the DNR, do you recall how many different sites you'd identified to the DNR as having slag and not having slag?
I'll have to shoot from the hip a little bit, but what they asked for was where slag was placed in 2018. And I'm gonna say 100 segments of road. So, all we simply say was, they aren't all exactly a mile out there, as you know, but a typical road from first to second, we might tell them 120th Street, Davis, whatever. So they were given a list of every road that had slag placed on it in 2018. That was the first thing they asked for.
So you gave them a list of every road in the whole county, every place
Yeah.
where slag is applied to anything.
Right.
And then for the ones that, you also identified, I presume, places that didn't have any slag placed in 2015.
Later on, they asked for where there had not been any. And according to our records, those roads did not receive slag. I know, like Charlie, they mentioned specifically, that happened to be one road that almost every single year in the last 6, 7 years had slag on it. So, I mean, the Kent Farm statement, yeah, they might have saw some there in whatever year. But our records show some slag went on the road there. Now, what we don't know is specifically, did it go in front of Santos' house? We don't know that. We know whatever we told them, 374, whatever the number they said, tons went on in 2018.
Did we put any slag down on Yellow Avenue?
Not that our records show.
How do we keep those records?
The driver's note on the rock ticket what road they're on. Put them in a database. That's how we keep them. We do know that one specifically. Bob Walker lives there and did not want any slag on his road, so the motor grader operator had been directed, do not put any slag on that road. If it got there, I can't explain that one. Same way, and they mentioned 155th, our records say we've never placed any on 155th. We know we placed a lot of rock.
Does anybody else have any questions or anything you wanted to respond to earlier, from earlier?
I just, as far as where is not, they did not want every single road. So we picked whatever they asked for, 6 roads, and gave them 6 roads. But where they're sampling, that's their choice. But we have 0 input in where they chose to sample.
And I think we intentionally stayed away from those decisions as well.
Right.
Didn't want to
I mean, we knew they were more than likely gonna try and be in front of residences or where people would be present.
Yeah.
They also said, you know, they might move down the road, so.
Alrighty, then, thank you, appreciate that.
Sure.
Then moving back to items 7C, so, obviously, given the weather we've been having, given the spring, given just the high cost of road maintenance and repair, you know, we've had folks saying, oh gosh, we spend too much money, some people saying we don't spend enough money, you know, obviously, till every road is probably paved in titanium, no one's gonna be completely happy, but, one of the things that I wanted to ask about is, you know, we see, we've had discussions, especially with members of the public, about roads that are high in cost but low in use. And, you know, do you see any opportunity, or what would the cost savings be like in terms of those types of roads? Now, I'm not saying we need to go out and declare that we're not gonna maintain any more roads, but kind of, what? You look at me?
Oh, no, I forget. Wonder where you're going.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, are there roads we're not getting the bang for our buck out?
Would you allow me a little?
Please.
So I received an email from somebody on 152nd, Miss Gary, and she listed all the taxes collected on 152nd Street. And the summary of her statement was, we feel we should deserve more rock than we get on our road based on the number of taxes we're remitting. It was around $34,000. Now, that was the total taxes remittance. And so I think for the public, I want them to realize, first off, when you look at your tax bill, roughly 45% of your tax bill goes to the county, 40% maybe, somewhere in that range. So of that 33,000, you're down to about 15. Of the 15,000, probably, I'm gonna say 15% goes to roads, maybe less, probably less.
In the last tax year, 8.6%.
Okay, 8.6% of the
Goes to
county,
roads.
of the county budget goes to.
In the case of where they live.
And it goes to the case of roads. So if you do the math on their particular stretch, we get about $3,000 for that 2-mile stretch of road. And if you remember from the previous comments she made where Supervisor Bonebrake had looked, that the county is currently spending about $10,500 a year on each mile of that road. So again, there are other road segments that are supplementing that road segment's use. And it may be hard for them to hear, but if you expect a 4-lane freeway, you may not want to live in the country because we don't have the funding. And we are restricted by levy caps in secondary roads and other areas of what we can produce. We are restricted by the state statute as to what we can transfer funding. We currently transfer the maximum amount from the general basic fund into our secondary roads. The rural services fund and all those, they fund 911 services, they fund your sheriff, they fund your jail, they fund your mental health services, they fund your homeless shelters. So there are numerous, they fund your libraries. There are lots of places for these dollars, these property tax dollars to go, and I think people are not aware of how far property tax dollars are spread. It doesn't go, a very small portion, 8%, thank you, Keith. I was trying to do the mental math and I was down to maybe 15% of county dollars that would actually go to road maintenance, which is not a lot of money. You know, we're about $30 million budget, give me this, so 8% of 30 million's $2.5 million, right? That's about what we have to maintain those roads.
Yeah, and so the fact is, I mean, I appreciate the tax information was gathered, but the reality is that the rest of the county is subsidizing those roads. And we do that all over the place for roads that, have a limited use. And, you know, at some point, especially as, you know, our materials costs go up, as, the weather and, the environment, has an effect on our costs, we have to either find a way to increase money, which can't happen, because we're capped, as Jeff said, or we have to find a way to reduce those costs. And that may mean prioritizing certain road structures and the level of maintenance, on those roads. And I think we as a county need to figure out how we prioritize our roads. And I know we do that to a certain extent, but at a certain point, we're not going to be able to, continue the level of maintenance that we have on all these roads, without some kind of drastic change. And so that's, I guess, kind of the discussion I wanted to see. How do we prioritize roads? I mean, how do we, for a road, for instance, 152nd Street, which has been in our discussions here recently, with members of the public, how do we decide how much money to put into that?
Right now, it's been sort of, maybe not in real recent history, but it's been sort of an on-demand. So you spend more money if it needs more
Sure.
attention. And it's studying in need of that now. Ms. Gurink is correct about that. I mean, probably needs a lot of rock down there.
Yeah.
Again, that the river taketh away when it comes up.
I mean, I've driven down there, and everything they said is right. The water comes up, the rock gets washed away, cut down into that bank. You can see it in the field, but yeah, short of re-engineering that thing or having some magically installed levee, I don't know what else you can do about it. That and the whole issue of what the taxation is of, and this isn't your department, Keith, but if we've got people there who are living there full-time, who are paying what a full-time residence would cost in terms of taxes, then that's really just putting more burden on the other members of the county. So, you know, we have to try and figure out how to grease every squeaky wheel and make sure everybody's paying their fair share, and that's, you know, nobody wants to hear that there's limited resources for unlimited needs, but I just think that that's something that the public should be aware of, that we wrestle with that, and I commend Keith and his staff for doing a great job with what we have. Because it's not an ideal situation, we're never going to have enough to satisfy everyone.
I think we did discuss low water crossings.
Right.
One possibility.
Then I,
Spend the money one time, and
Yeah.
hopefully don't have to again for a while.
right, and I think that kind of creative thinking is excellent, and that, you know, that's one of the reasons I think when we do.
And if you did special projects like that, how would you fund those, Keith? Would those have to come out of maintenance dollars, or would there be other methods? If we decided, let's say we wanted to experiment with low water crossings on a road like that, would we have other mechanisms to fund that so we didn't take away from an already strained maintenance budget?
Basically, you know, the single largest area in the secondary road budget's taking care of the roads, blading the roads, rock on the roads. I'm not talking construction side, but patching, crack sealing on the paved roads, et cetera. So you gotta take away from one to do the other. There's not any other good way. So if you spend $100,000 doing that, then maybe you take some from the rock budget, some from the pavement patching, whatever. If we have specific pavement patching in mind, we have a specific dollar value, but otherwise we typically have, let's say, 50 or 100,000 in there to allow for pavement patching, crack sealing, or bridge maintenance too. So it's just kind of a fixed area that it needs to come out, or choose to not do new equipment, you know, capital expenditures, eventually those catch up with you if you stop doing capital expenditures. Same with your infrastructure. I mean, we're typically targeting about $1 million local to construction. You can take from that, but, you know, when you got a $90–100 million backlog, you just get further in the hole.
Well, it also hurts you on your farm to market and federal aid, because that's your match dollars, so you get more work, you get more money to get more work than bring them in.
And I don't envy you, because as soon as the road in front of someone's place is not what they want it to be, then they know how to be the county engineer better than you. And that's a feeling I sympathize with, but you've got to juggle so many competing demands, and, you know, so I think what we're hearing is, we're maxed out on basically what we can spend, and, it's kind of a rob Peter to pay Paul situation, to improve one area versus another. And, I'd like the citizens who are concerned about the spending aspect of it to help us figure out if they'd like where to get the money from, because it's easy to say, I need more of this, I need more of this, but we have to figure out where it comes from. And, you know, and in doing so, we have to prioritize the value to the entire county. And Jeff mentioned the farm, we gotta make sure people can get their products to market, we gotta make sure that economic activity can continue, and it's not an easy thing, so, you know, we're gonna see heightened belts and increased costs, and I just encourage everyone out there to remember that.
Some of those efforts we looked at, and it seemed to be most of the roads were in like the West Liberty area. A couple of years ago, we talked about going to some Class Bs, actually abandoning some roads and turning them back. How has the progress been on those? There were a couple that we delayed because of construction.
Yeah, and there's some we just chose not to do.
Okay. And how many miles was that? Just off the cuff, I would do.
6 miles.
6 miles, and is my number, our average cost per mile about $7,500?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. So $50,000.
Of the rock roads.
Yeah. For rock.
For rock roads.
How many miles of rock roads do we have?
We have over 600 total. We have about 400, very close to 400 miles of rock roads.
Do we have 9 or 11 graders operating?
We have 9 machines. We typically, I mean, when I came here, it's not changed, run 6 districts, and adverse conditions, be it winter weather or be it a bad spring when we can't be out there every day, when you have good weather, then we typically go to 8. But 8 operators out there, but usually one machine's always kept as a spare. Doug might remember being before me that I know at one point in time there were a whole lot more motor grader districts.
You guys were out Saturday working on roads.
We opted to run the motor graders Saturday because of just how the weather forecast for this week and the conditions. Friday were where they could work in a lot of places, not every single place, but and then mercifully they could be out there today too, but we did opt to run the motor graders on Saturday. And that would be unusual, other than removing snow.
Well, one thing that different conversations I've had with the public in regard to taxes and where their tax dollars go is the perception that the public has or where their tax dollars actually go. If you're just having a conversation with individuals and you pose the question to them on, well, what percentage let's say you've got a $5,000
Per year.
tax that you're liable for, what percentage of this do you suppose goes to the roads? I've had numerous people guess that over 50% of their dollars go to the roads. And when you ask the question to them, what do you think the largest percentage of your money actually goes to? My personal experience has been less than 3%. Realize where their largest dollars go to, and of course that's to the schools. But very few people, way less than 5%, realize that. And there's a huge percentage of feel that right around that 50% range goes to roads, where the truth of the matter is, just doing a quick calculation here, at 8.6, if you've got a $5,000 tax bill, $430 goes to roads, which is about a load and a half of rock. That's the truth of it. It's just an education issue.
So it obviously varies with what township you're in. That I'm in Bloomington, and ours is about $2 lower than Goshen, where those folks are.
But those numbers are
Ours
pretty
was
close.
about nine, mine's about 9 something. But you got where I live, you got where, I don't know where all of you live, but Nathan says he lives in Mark Twain, I think. So about 9% probably of his goes to the roads.
Are you doxing me?
No. So, but you know, you've also got those areas that are paying for their own roads privately and yet contributing to the county roads. That helps supplement a little bit, but it's not a lot.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate the work you do to.
Have we seen any counties, any areas, Keith, that new emerging trends that you've seen that are interesting, you've been watching, new things?
The only thing, you know, is it's been quite a few years back now, Washington County bonded for like $12 million, bonded for it. So that put the burden on everybody, and particularly to work on not all that many roads. And I'm just gonna tell you, they didn't have tremendous success.
Well, the challenge is, as you said, I don't know, what's our backlog of structures that need significant effort? And, how many $1 million would you say our backlog is in this county?
20 million.
20 million, yeah. And I don't think it's any different in any county, and, you know, that's, I mean, if we all recall back, how many years they go to the gas tax, we bought about 20 cents, they went to 10, and what, that got all eaten up by price, right? I mean,
Yes.
we didn't see any, we saw next to no dollars out of that for work. I mean, immediately what happened, and I guess you shouldn't be shocked if you take a system that's running at a certain capacity and you just inject more money into it. You didn't add any capacity, you just added more money, so that everything got taken away by price. People raised their prices, you know, the construction got more expensive because it was a rare resource, which is really what causes the problem. We don't have enough people doing the work, and there's not enough money, so. Interesting.
Anyone else?
Well, I think some of these areas, you know, I've just sit on this board for a number of years now, and there are 3 or 4 areas that are constant sources of pain, I will call them. And it's every time the cedar comes up, so we guess where those areas are, and it's every, you know, and I don't know if there's ways we can do things to try to you know, it's like the riverfronts when they redesign them to allow them to flood, so that you can minimize the damage. I don't know if there's work we can do, and if we should look at funding that outside of our maintenance dollars to try something, to try to get that burden off of the rest of the taxpayers. Because the reality is, we have landowners in that area, and we're not gonna abandon their access to their land. We have to provide access to land at some stretch. And like on 152nd, you know, unfortunately, there's a big nature area in there that will have, you know, you have public access to, which sure compounds the problem down there. More traffic, more problems. Do we have any idea? We probably don't have, well, I shouldn't say that, but it's not some road, do we have idea of traffic counts on roads? It's not, you have that on like gravel roads too?
Yeah, it's on every road, it's not perfection, I mean, the DOT does it, and they do it, now a full count, I think, they do it less and less. I think a full count happens every 8 years. Every 4, they come in and do a partial count and extrapolate out based on past history. So, yeah, we have, I don't know, decades of traffic data.
Yeah, I was thinking, when we said that, I was thinking I saw somewhere I had a little chart or map you gave me that had all the road.
Yeah.
Somebody gave me with all the road, you just recently gave us one. That'd be interesting to learn. I don't know.
I think we're due to receive another one like real soon.
You know, Jeff, that, speaking of the public area down there, it's just a parking area there to the west, you know, for vehicles to pull in, and it's a walking area, you know. Who says the walking area can't sit farther to the east? We're
Right.
walking anyway,
Yeah, that's why I said, why can't I sit up in the corner?
that's my point.
Walk down the road ditch, who cares? It's all hard to get an exercise.
Yeah, you may wanna put the parking area on the southeast corner of that property possibly, was my thought. I wasn't exactly.
You weren't coming up to the corner?
No, I wasn't coming to the corner.
Anyway? Okay. I would look at that. Okay.
Yeah. Keith, thank you much, appreciate it.
Sure.
Oh, just a brief question, I know we talked about, and I know you pre-staged rock for one of the first times ever here a couple of weeks ago, I know.
Right.
Some think that was a huge waste of money, and I think you said there were some latent benefits in there. Have you put any kind of a cost analysis to that practice, or looked at, you know, what, you know, obviously when you unload and reload, there's an expense. But then I think you also mentioned that you were able to get the rock onto the road faster than you ever have. So there's an expense also with, you know, trucks sitting at the quarry forever waiting.
Right, and since that time, a couple weeks ago, I mean, they had hauled material out of the spots. On one of the pouring rain days, they hauled back in, replenished, and, it's literally going back out of there today. I think we're going out of, at least 4 locations, including Windland Quarries. But, as for instance, a Ward Avenue one, you're talking 15 minutes to get rock on the road for the residents. And our windows right now are very small. I mean, when normally, Doug's memory might be as good as mine, but end of April, we're figuring we're doing contract rock. You know, that you've dried up, or maybe into May, but, you know, we're a long ways, seem to be a long ways from that, with another 2.5 inches forecast for this week. So you spot it out there while you can, and, you know, they're not wholesale rocking, they're going to a muddy spot or whatever. And some of them, we have a road 180th closed back, if you can call it behind the den, but the north way that, you know, the motor grader went there this morning and splashed into the mud holes, like, you know, roads, you know, it's gonna stay closed, it's still just a pond. and we get more rain, it'll stay that way. But anyway, they're able to haul rock out more quickly. And that's the whole object of this particular season, to try and get material out there faster.
I'd like to, I don't know if it's gonna, trouble you too much, but I'd love to see if you could, how you could quantify that a little bit. What is it, faster, what is, like, because I mean, we typically know how long it takes us to haul this. Let's say we're rocking a mile of a road that's 10 miles from the quarry. How long does that take? My guess is the grader operator's sitting, waiting half of his time for trucks to come.
Sometimes they are, it depends on, again, things are really different right now. When you're contract rocking, you might have 10 trucks hauling out there, somewhat following each other. Even our guys, you hear the blade man call and say, hey, come in this other route, because they only want to run a couple loads over a particular road rather than pump it and damage it. So it's really a different sort of situation. But I mean, we figure it's like 50 cents a ton to load the stuff. So like I said, we don't like to handle twice, but I will tell you the other 3 counties I've served in, we work from stockpiles all the time. It's just a fact of life. It's been kicked around here, but never done. And these little dinky stockpiles wouldn't be what we were talking about anyway. But you gotta have some economies there that hauling it in when it's more cost favorable. So right now that isn't the object to save money. The object is to get rock out on the road for the people that want it out there. And if the weather had stayed good, that practice would stop. But we're in another round here. And we did have a few days in there where we were able to haul directly to the roads. And that's what we did. It's just kind of where it is right now. I did hear literally of one of the counties that their practice is they haul out in February and March, which most county engineers think that's insane. So, but it's a well-respected county, and that's what they've always done, but put a lot of it in the ditch. So, again, you
They
wait
put
for
it
that.
on the roads in February and March?
Yep,
So they're putting on frozen roads?
yeah.
That wouldn't be good if you had a snowstorm.
Yep.
It would go get plowed off, right?
I mean, that happened to us in November with that large wet snow. Roads weren't frozen up. You're gonna roll some rock up in it and lose it. There's no avoiding it if you remove the snow. And you got 8 inches, you gotta remove it.
Okay. That's all the questions.
All right, anybody else? Thank you. Next up, Eric, you're on the hot seat. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Under item A, we have one combined preliminary final plat, clear mist subdivision for your review and possible approval. It's one lot agricultural subdivision on Vale Avenue, north of Highway 61. It's an existing house with some contiguous farm ground. The owners wish to be able to sell the house and retain the farm ground because of previous splits in the area years back. Had to go through subdivision proceedings. It's kind of a unique shape, but it was a house that sat back off the road, so they created a parcel, or excuse me, a lot around that house with frontage to Vale. And it actually only encompasses the existing driveway back to the house. So it was unanimously recommended for approval by the zoning commission on Friday.
Entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Jeff has moved. Doug has seconded. This is a roll call vote. Jeff? Doug? Aye. Scott? Aye. Santos?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Approved.
Then item B, I'm asking you to set a public hearing for a rezoning. We'll be setting a public hearing for June 3rd at 9 a.m. On a request request to rezone approximately 15.92 acres in 76 Township from current C1 commercial to R1 residential. Just setting the public hearing date at this time.
Where's that?
Excuse me?
Where's this thing?
This is at the top of, well, the top and slightly just Isley's Hill, if you're going southbound.
That little shed up there.
There was some old commercial there, and I don't want to get too far into a discussion with the public hearing, but that's the
Just trying to
location.
figure out where it is.
Yep.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second. Jeff has moved, Scott has seconded. All those in favor? Motion approved. Anything else?
Yeah, just a couple comments. Under other, we've seen what the river's doing, and to quote the old cheesy phrase, good Lord willing, and the river don't rise, hopefully it continues to go down. We're obviously, like everybody else, watching this weather pattern for later this week. We just wanted to remind folks that are along the Mississippi that have experienced some of the high water. Any properties that are damaged, that are within a regulated floodplain, are subject to some additional restrictions and requirements to repair. Once the water goes down, we'll be doing some preliminary assessments. I don't foresee widespread damage. Most of those structures along the Mississippi were elevated to 1 foot above the 100-year flood after 93 or 2000. However, I think there's a few that, slipped through the cracks somewhere and never got elevated, that will be subject to what's considered substantial damage provisions, which means repair can only take place if they elevate. So even if you believe you only have minor damage, a permit is required for any kind of reconstruction other than just hosing out a structure. If there's any kind of electrical repair, sheet rock removal, if it's in the floodplain, it requires a floodplain development permit, and then the damage at that time will be assessed to see if it's substantial, because there are National Flood Insurance Program rules that apply that we have to follow. So,
Then substantial.
substantial.
The definition of that could be not a lot of money, right?
It's based on market value, so if you have damage that exceeds 50% of the fair market value of the structure, then it's considered substantial damage. And so for some of those, it doesn't take a whole lot. Some of them are fairly small, don't have a lot of high fair market value, and with today's construction cost, and certainly remediation costs are even higher sometimes than new construction when you're, and there's a lot of things that some people don't think about when it comes to properly abating flood damage with electrical lines that have soaked underwater. It's not as simple as replacing the outlet, and so we'll be able to assist damage assessments. Again, I don't foresee it or expect it to be widespread, simply because a lot of them were raised after 93 and hopefully weathered the storm quite well. But we will have to do some preliminary assessments to see where we're at if the water continues to recede, as we all hope it does.
So would you say anybody with damage in a floodplain should contact your
They
office?
need to contact our office to possibly schedule an inspection. If there's any concerns about structural integrity, we'll assist where we can. Some of those issues just require bringing an engineer in to look at it if they think it was made structurally unsafe. But we can certainly advise them of what the requirements are to remediate the damage that they have, that they already noticed. So that's a little note on that.
And that would be true of any floodplain, correct?
Any floodplain.
Not just the Mississippi.
Right, anything in a regulated floodplain that's on the flood map as 100-year floodplain. So, I just kind of wanted to comment, in the discussion about how do we handle roads that lead to sparsely populated areas and cost. And in light of an upcoming public hearing on a rezoning, something that doesn't help you with the existing areas of concern, but just for the future, this is really where good planning comes into place. We can certainly, I think, do better than has been done in the past 50 years as far as where do we encourage development. Some of these areas, and Mother Nature's changing, we know that too. It's not all just poor planning, but the fact remains, as we look at rezoning properties, it's encouraging development, and do we want to do that on gravel roads, whether it's a floodplain or not? And so just to kind of keep that in the back of your minds as development requests come forward. It may not happen for 20 years, but these are the kind of things that come back to reveal that it's not always a good idea to just think, well, somebody can make a subdivision here and good for them. Well, what are the costs to everyone else? That's why we have guiding documents like the comprehensive plan. I think it's just a great reminder that, you know, that planning, that a lot of thought needs to go into where development happens, and roads is one of those issues you guys have wrestled with every roads and bridges.
Eric, did we ever, there was talk a number of years ago, and I don't know if we ever addressed it in the comprehensive plan or if it ever came up in the Board of Adjustment or anybody, we talked about residential subdivisions and hard surface roads. And basically not allowing residential subdivision to develop off of hard surface, without a hard surface road in the future. Did we ever take any formal steps on that, or have we had more discussion or thought?
No, it's not black and white that says that you can't, or that we won't, you know, encourage development. I think we can all see the lack of wisdom in doing something like that unless it's on an area that the hard surface ends and the expansion of hard surface. Most of our future land use maps, was for speaking specifically to residential, and the same would ring true for commercial and industrial. They're off of hard surface roads. There are areas we've identified already, you know, from our long-range planning sessions that, you know, they're nearby or adjacent to existing city limits, existing industrial areas. Some of these, when we use the term hard surface, however, we've seen this spring particularly, hard surface isn't the same on our guiding maps as paved roads. And we've ran into the contractors are feeling that frustration this year. And, you know, so I think we may need to even take a stronger stance, or may want to tighten that up a little bit, because it just kind of kicks the can down the road, both from an expectation of what the road will be like for the people that develop in those areas and ultimately buy properties in that area, you know, and just the ongoing costs too. So I think it's something that, it's a good idea for people to remember why folks like that remain strong during those planning sessions, making those decisions. There's very expensive ramifications to not implementing good future long use planning.
Well, the challenge I see is, and this is a challenge rural Iowa is having, is, you know, we're seeing some residential development, but it's typically happening outside of our urban environments. It's out in our, and I know why they're doing it, because you don't have the, you know, they're typically going on septics. They probably got a well, maybe it's a public well, maybe it's not. And then you're not off a paved road. Well, when you get that consolidated amount of activity of residential developments, you know, it taxes our road systems that they're not designed to carry. This is for agricultural purposes, you know, where the school buses are gonna go out there every day. Well, you know, the farmer, he's gonna get up at 4 o'clock in the morning if the ground's if it's a little soft, and he's gonna get out that truck out of there early if he has to, and he's not gonna run on it when it's soft. And the residential just changes that whole world, and you get, you know, and I just think that, you know, and I know why they're doing it, because of cost. You know, your cost per lot is so much lower in those areas. And there's a reason.
Right.
And then the rest of the taxpayers wind up paying
That's exactly
for how many years?
Yeah. Margins on the front end for one individual, not for the rest of the residents, you know, as a whole. And you're right, you know, equipment, it's not just farm equipment that's gotten bigger and heavier. All the construction equipment, if you look at the size of cement trucks now and what they haul, you know, and we're have people asking for permits to have these on seal coat roads to keep working.
I was shocked.
Then the damage is done, and then the farmers that need to use the road, it's already done, and it just compounds itself, you know.
I was shocked when I saw that the smallest cement truck they have is what, 20 tons? It's like, oh my word, 26 tons? Like, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me.
But just keeping in mind, you know, and we're always watching for grant opportunities, as we talk about flood damage mitigation, something if funding opportunities would ever come up, could we buy out properties that are on roads that are costing a lot of money, that Mother Nature is constantly battling us on, return some of those to natural floodplain areas. Just things to be thinking about and watch for funding opportunities. It's not cheap, but in the long run, it may be the way to go, in conjunction with good planning and not continuing that pattern of bad development. Because then you talk about, you know, low water crossings might be a Band-Aid solution to stop the bleeding of some of this damage. However, you know, you still have to think of public, you know, school buses going to some of these areas. Some of these people don't necessarily leave because the water comes up. Well, now there's an expectation for emergency service access, you know, so it may help, but is it a good long-term solution when there's people that do stay in these areas, and if a fire truck or an ambulance needs to get in there, sanitation, like garbage trucks, school buses, just great reasons for good planning, I think, moving forward. So, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Item number 9, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the April 29th, 2019 regular meeting. So moved. Moved by Jeff, seconded by Scott. Those in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence, Santos, we'll start with you, sir.
So I got the email that was sent out on 152nd Street. I think some of you guys had got it as well too, from Polly Gierneck. I also had a meeting with Senator Lofgren Friday. Had a discussion with him in regards to the weight bill that had been passed, or concerns around it, the children's mental health that had just been passed with no funding in direction to our group, and the tax levy, the cap that they had put on through, the restrictions through that. So he had mentioned to me that we were going to have he was going back to have another couple meetings that they had there, and that these were discussion items that he knew that he was going to direct back and may have some more people be in contact with me in regards to those questions and requests that I had followed up with him. Then I had a letter that I'll have with Amy in regards to delinquent taxes. Something small, but basically it's a standard form that I think that we send out, and if we can ever have a courtesy letter versus just saying, hey, your place is going up for sale and you only have $26 of unpaid taxes. Is there a way that maybe we can be a little more friendlier versus just stating, hey, your place is up for sale and you didn't pay your $26 or $12, you know, maybe if there's a limit, if maybe you're under $100, maybe a friendly reminder type thing. I'll check with Amy on that. That was just correspondence that I had. That's all I have.
Just the correspondence on 152nd Street.
Same here. Scott?
I have nothing. And I had no correspondence, but I would like to take a minute to talk about the race that they had at Buffalo on Saturday. The fair board did a great job up there. They had things looking really good. They had Heritage Hall open for the public to take a look at, and they were packed. They had a huge crowd. They kept everything on hand. Last I talked to Lori, it was probably half hour before the races were over. She said a normal race night, they go through 60 pounds of hamper, and they went through 180, and they were still selling food. So I'm thinking they had a real successful night. Scott had asked for a little information on concessions, probably some information together for him.
Very good.
And I'll see if I can get a count on ticket sales while you're there. Put on a really good show. Committees.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had one committee meeting, and that was the safety meeting Wednesday, 3 o'clock.
Sir?
I just had on Friday the 3rd, Conservation Board had a quick meeting just to discuss a particular bid on concrete on the cabins down there. And they want to get those approved, and they did. Now we're gonna look water down.
All ready to start board?
No. Can't get too big a hurry.
I haven't been down to see how the deep lakes are looking. They're
Deep.
full. They're deep.
Deeper.
They're deeper than normal, let's put it that way.
Yeah, last time I was down the docks, we're kind of going on. It was a hike up.
So much groundwater down there, so just gotta be patient there again.
Yeah.
So, that's all I have.
I had no committees yet.
I had a goal setting on Friday with We Lead. Tried to develop the Liberty Park, their industrial area, and looking for some economic development in regards to that group. And then on Tuesday, this upcoming week, we'll have another one for the city council to look at the discussion of hiring NJ under the city as far as their economic development, so I might be going up to that one as well too.
I did have one of those things.
Go ahead, sir.
Under the grandstand is free this year, and Brian Wright is gonna set up a booth with emergency management there this year. And I talked to Kurt, and he's thinking about doing a booth underneath there as well. So. you know that.
Item number 12 is receive information from county employees. Nobody's jumping. Item number 13, A is discussion and possible action to approve resolution 0506-1902, suspending the collection of taxes.
Move to approve.
Second. Go ahead.
Been moved by Jeff, seconded by Scott. All, this is a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Doug? Aye. And I vote aye. Item B, 13B is action to accept the April 2019 payroll.
So move.
Second.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any other items with the administration office?
Nope, I don't have anything else to talk to you about.
Anybody have anything else? All right, thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.